and eat something that you love, candy, if you will. And let's see. Let's start out with inviting the public to speak. So are there any members of the public that would like to address the commission? And just a reminder, we have 2 minutes for you to address the commission. I don't know if there's somebody online first or if it's just. Okay, I think it was just you.
I'm just really just for the record, Simon Fulford. I'm the Executive Director of Parrot Creek Child and Family Services up in Clackamas County. I'm also on the board of the Oregon Alliance and attending these meetings to provide feedback to my colleagues in the provider community serving children and families.
Okay. Thank you, Simon, for being here. Anybody else from the public that would like to address the commission? Okay. Hearing none, we will move on to officially welcome our new members. So we have Rosemary Brewer, who I don't think is here. Rosemary Brewer is the Executive Director of the Oregon Crime Victims Law Center and will be representing the views of the victim advocacy realm. So really glad to have her. And I'm also very glad to have Brian Detman, who is with the Youth Development Division, ODE, so representing the education realm. So thank you for being here. All right, we're going to move right along to, I'm going to pass it to Brian for the update on where CJ is.
All right, thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, commissioners. So the update on the technical assistance procurement is pretty short. It's still open and will be until tomorrow at 3 p.m. to receive any and all requests or proposals, I guess, through that request for proposal process. From there, then we will move into the selection process, review and selection process phase, which is being administered by the Department of Administrative Services with input, I guess, by a committee of both CJC members as well as this body here. So the chair and the vice chair were selected to be part of that review committee. But we would like to, I think, and maybe I'll turn it to the chair to facilitate, but open up 2 additional slots on that review committee from this body. So there's additional perspectives of commissioners as we go through that process. A couple of caveats so that you know what you're getting yourself into should you volunteer. It would be voluntary, of course. One is that there needs to be no conflict of interest as a result of being directly recipient or beneficiary of a contract should it go into place, or even a potential conflict or perceived conflict as it relates to, say, influence on what's meant to be an objective scoring and review process. So we'd ask that if you're involved in or have a direct benefit or influence or could be influenced by a selection, we'd ask that you abstain from volunteering and leave the opportunity for the 2 slots to be open to those who are not, have nothing to do with anything that might be submitted as a proposal. The expectation will be what DAS will schedule out our 2 meetings, a preparatory meeting. Then they'll issue and provide any proposals and scoring directions for those who are involved to do an independent scoring. So there's a time component to this, a workload component to it to review any and all applications and fill out any of the evaluation forms and scoring. Again, independent on your own without communication with others or any of the other review members. And then a final meeting to relay and discuss that information and that evaluation before input is submitted to DAS to tabulate, calculate, and kind of speak to next steps. So I wish I had a specific date and time, I guess, for any of those meetings. I don't know. They're tentatively intended to be through the month of November and December if scheduling allows, so that we have a selection made prior to, say, this commission's next meeting somewhere in the early part of 2025. So
Thank you, Ryan.
Talk about I guess I should say we do need either 2 people or no more people because they have to keep an odd number in the total makeup of the group.
Thank you, Ryan. So with that, I'll open the floor. Are there two members that would like to join that do not have any conflicts with the potential proposals? And I see a couple hands raised. Is that Andrew Smith and Joe O'Leary? Joe, I'll go with you first.
Thank you, Chair Armstrong Romero. I don't want to volunteer, and I do want to put on the record that I am a volunteer board member of the Council State Government's Justice Center, which is an organization that does staffing of commissions like this in other jurisdictions. I believe they are putting in to be considered for this commission staff. And I put that on the record. I tried to put that on the record last time, but it wasn't reflected in the minutes. And I would just ask that conflict be reflected in the minutes, and that I will not take part in the decision making because of that.
Thank you, Joe. With that, do we need a motion to amend the minutes before we move forward with asking for volunteers? Just in case, would anyone like to make a motion to amend the minutes to reflect that Commissioner O'Leary has a conflict?
I'd so move.
Is there a second? Any discussion?
Is it a conflict for me to second the motion?
Yes.
Chair?
Any discussion?
Chair?
Commissioner Rogers?
Yes, I guess I'm a little confused, so help me. Should we go back and even like maybe take a look and see if there were any other changes to the minutes? And this is not listed on the agenda or as an action item, so I'm a little confused on the process for this. So it feels like we have two things going at the same time, and I'm bouncing back and forth between the two things. So I just need a little help.
That is fair. Sure.
If I may, so typically, at least CJC, so I will take fault for any of this confusion as it relates to, we typically just generate minutes and publish them without an approval or, approval of prior minutes or otherwise. That said, that is something this commission can establish as its procedure.
Great.
If you'd like, and that's maybe what would need to be this ad hoc agenda item now. If not, hearing Commissioner O'Leary's point, we can certainly go back and just revise our minutes that are published online and held as record for this, the last meeting in July. And I guess for that case, anything else, if somebody's flagging it as a need. So there's a couple of ways we could approach that.
Commissioner Berger?
I think that just having the CJC reflected, because I do remember Joe bringing this up last time, but I think it should be reflected in the minutes so that there's not a concern later on that he did not, somebody alleging he did not make that announcement.
Thank you, Commissioner Berger. Any other thoughts? Regarding, I guess specifically regarding the minutes, whether or not we need, if we are okay to just move forward with the CJC posting the minutes as normal, or should we review those as a commission and vote on those?
Seems to me that if somebody sees something missing in the minutes, maybe they could just let us all know and we can.
Can I get some background on why CJC does that different than some other commissions and local government entities?
Yeah, I don't know the historical answer. I know that in my time here, as we've switched to the recordings as kind of one of our standing points of minutes, our minutes have just become time-stamped kind of synopsis of the meeting. And so we haven't gone through a formal exercise to amend. We just kind of stand by the recording of the meeting.
And I assume that disclaimer is at the bottom of that. This is only a synopsis and does not reflect the entirety of the meeting.
I want to say yes, but I'd have to review it.
If that's the case, I'm fine without having a formal approval in the meeting, as long as that's time stamped and the recording serves as the meeting.
I would agree with that. Thank you, Commissioner Conrad. Anyone else? Any other conversation regarding the minutes?
The chair.
Commissioner Rogers?
I would agree. I think that, however, our first meeting was not recorded and provided. And so I think that that point comes to play, that it needs to be acknowledged. I just don't know if we need to take a formal vote of it, or if a commission member speaks up to CJC and they just report at our next meeting if there were any corrections. That would also seem to work for me, but yeah.
Please help me to understand. I thought it was recorded. I'm pretty sure it was recorded, but can others confirm? Okay. Commissioner Berger.
That was my understanding too. Is that
Commissioner Rojo, Vice President Rojo, sorry, Vice
I
Chair.
requested it. I requested a link to it and told it was not, that there was something a glitch that occurred.
I don't recall, to be honest.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think it's fine. I think doing it, that's fine. I think, I think if there's a glitch and for some reason our meetings aren't recorded and available to the public, then I think we need to have the minutes approved. But if the recording occurs, I agree with, I think it was Commissioner Connors that said that as long as there's a disclaimer, it makes sense.
Okay. So I think that that makes sense, and it seems like we're all in agreement. Any other discussion on that? Okay. Hearing none, thank you, Commissioner Rogers. And I think
Chair?
Commissioner. Oh.
Chair Armstrong, this is Andy. And I'm here today on behalf of Representative Tom Anderson. I just had a question about the agenda item generally, not about the minutes, when that's appropriate.
Oh, sure. I'm so sorry. I did recognize that you had your hand raised. Just to close out Commissioner O'Leary's request, we can scrap the motion in the vote, and we will amend the minutes to ensure that it's properly reflected about the conflict. So thank you, Commissioner O'Leary, for raising that. And
You're
then
welcome.
I will move
Sorry.
over to Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Chair. And again, I'm here today on behalf of the Representative Tom Anderson. But my question is, could one of you just remind me, and maybe others might benefit, the general scope of the TA, the scope of the procurement in terms of services requested, not so much having to do a selection or anything, just to remind us of what the purpose of the TA is and how it might help us.
Yeah, I will just read from it briefly. At the high level, scope of work was to provide guidance to this commission in their effort to analyze the juvenile justice system and reduce inequities in the system. Some of the more drilled down details, meeting participation, and a few elements related to that. And if you'd like, I can read those to you, but probably more specifically, section 2 is policy best practices. So 1, provide the commission with examples of best practices, policies, appropriations, and reform activities from other locales, connecting the commission with national research experts and others for peer learning. 2, review and provide feedback on draft reform policies and practices that the commission will draft. And then 3rd, present findings in a PowerPoint presentation and provide written report, including guidance on implementation of best practices, quality assurance, or performance measure evaluations for any enacted reforms. 3rd section is around additional reporting. That ask is for the previous meeting. 1, to facilitate a comprehensive inventory of all government committees and work groups in Oregon engaged in criminal justice initiatives, including identification of alignment, redundancies, and/or gaps, and present findings in a PowerPoint presentation. And the second add was the review activities of other states' criminal or juvenile justice system, and present findings in a PowerPoint presentation with priority areas of focus identified by this commission.
That's a question. So you're saying the people that volunteer for this position, that's what they're going to be doing, is all these PowerPoints? Or
Correct. Those would be, in essence, the deliverables that a selected entity would be required to provide.
And then just 2 people from this team will do all of that.
No.
Oh.
We'll review the proposals to do that. There'll be 4 folks from this group as well as then I think 3, 4 from the commission, 3 CJC staff as a part of a review committee to look over and evaluate any requests to do this work.
Okay, so kind of choosing who's going to
Yes.
do it in fact. Okay,
Correct, yes.
gotcha. Thank you.
Chair, if I may.
Please.
I am happy to volunteer if we need a body and nobody else wants to do it, but my term ends in January. My term on this commission, unfortunately, will probably end then as well. So if these meetings take place in November and December, happy to do it, participate. I just won't be able to carry through with it. So whatever value that is to folks, but if you need an extra body, I'm happy to do that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'm happy to volunteer for that.
Thank you, Commissioner Detman,
I'm also happy to volunteer.
Commissioner
I
Berger.
will step back then.
Thank you so much.
I know. We'll find other ways to work.
Just a beep over here.
All right, so it sounds
So
like
if I could do Chair, one very quick follow-up, if I could, it's Andy Smith again.
Please.
Appreciated that background. It's very helpful. What is the general timeline for when the products of the RFP might come back, just to get a sense of when the contract will get some of these products that will help us, just so we have a sense of when that comes back to us, some of the tools or some of the deliverables?
Okay, making sure that I've got your question correct. The timeline, I'll just back all the way up to the timeline. So the request for proposals ends tomorrow. We're told that then this committee that we're talking about to review should be able to begin their work as early as, say, 2 weeks from now, but they'll be scheduling dependent to determine these 2 dates and work through that process. The RFP does list some deliverable dates tentatively for the last 2 associated reports, that being the inventory as well as the other state information, as January and June of 2025. Given where we're at in the timeline, I think it's realistic to assume that at least that first one would need to shuffle back for the contracting process that is going to be required. So best guess to your question, and I guess to the group, is we're probably looking at maybe, fingers crossed, getting contracts in place and an inventory, say by let's call it, mid-terms, or let's in a quarter's calendar, that would be April of 2025. And then I guess whether or not that second deliverable needs to change or not would be the question maybe to discuss. It's if there, or, consider once we're in that place, does a report on other state information need to be still by June? Or depending on how this commission lays out its meetings for the next year, maybe it's better aligned with a commensurate meeting that was scheduled.
Mr. Smith, does that help to answer? Do you have any additional questions?
Yes, that's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Never seen that background before.
Okay. So with that, may the minutes please reflect that Commissioner Berger and Commissioner Detman will be on the review committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So the next item is a plan of action. And just to remind you, at our last/first meeting that we had in July, we discussed our general governance model, which was that a quorum is required for a vote, to conduct a vote. A quorum is 9 members, and it's regardless of their voting status. Voting is initiated by a motion from a member and it's seconded by another member, and the motion requires a simple majority to pass. What we didn't do is for the minutes, just to reflect who we have both online and in person. And we should probably take a step back to make sure that the minutes accurately reflect who are the voting members here today. So if,
Would you do a roll call?
I'm sorry?
Would you like me to do a roll
Yes,
call?
that would be amazing.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. So Commissioner O'Leary,
Present via the internet webs.
Commissioner Detman, Commissioner Rogers,
I'm on via video.
Commissioner Murphy,
Here.
Commissioner Williams? Here. I should have called somebody absent. Sorry. Commissioner Brewer, I think we know is excused. Commissioner Geelan? We know is excused.
But I'm here present virtually.
Oh. Perfect.
Mhm.
Commissioner Devala?
Yeah.
Let's see. Commissioner Anderson?
So this is Andy Smith again. I'm here today on behalf of Representative Anderson. I'm his chief of staff.
Commissioner Conrad?
Here in the room,
Commissioner Perez? Here. Vice Chair Rojo?
Present in person.
Chair Armstrong Romero?
Here, present in person. Thank you so much. All right, with that, we'll move on to our next agenda item. And we had a discussion, and thank you to Brendan, Commissioner Murphy, for helping lead us through the discussion about how we move forward as a new commission. And one of the things that we talked about in July, as a reminder, was collective priorities. And so there was a poll that was sent out to all of you, and we had 9 members complete the poll. By the due date, at least. I haven't checked to make sure there were other submissions. However, from the 9 members, we analyzed the data that was submitted, and there were a top 3 priorities that were identified. And just a reminder that the priorities were directly from the House Bill 2320. And there were 9 areas of which the Juvenile Justice Policy Commission is to focus. And from those 9, we chose 3 that we would like to start with. And then that would help us to begin to gather an inventory and figure out who else is working on these items that we're selecting as our priorities. Does anybody else have any other thoughts about the conversation that we had in July and about where we're going with what's next on the agenda? Or any questions?
Chair Armstrong Romero, do we have handouts that maybe are in the room that we didn't receive online, or is there anything that I feel like I'm missing? Like, maybe not.
So the agenda is actually posted on the CJC website, which is what we're looking at.
Okay,
However,
I just wasn't sure if there were other things that we should be starting to look at. No, I have the agenda. Thank you so much for clarifying.
that's all we have.
This.
No, you're okay. You're okay.
I think the data from the survey results wasn't sent.
And we didn't send that around. Yep. And so Winifred is going to email the data from the survey. But what we can, thank you, Commissioner Rogers. What I can uplift today while that's getting sent is the ranking. And number 1 was diversion and restorative justice. There were 2 that were tied, which is disparities and service delivery. And the last one is alignment with best practices. So what the hope is today is to come to a consensus on those. And so I would ask for the vice chair to possibly make a motion. And then if there's a commissioner that would like to second that motion. And I don't know if you all want to wait until you receive the data before you make the motion, or.
But I'm sending them this. This is what they're getting.
Yeah, I can pull it up too. Commissioner Russell?
So I think I might be a little confused because I'm just now looking at this and I do apologize for that.
We'll hold that against you later. No, it's okay.
Chair Armstrong?
Yes.
Will you read to us, since we don't quite have it yet? I know you read us the titles. Were there other things? Oh, wait, we did get it. Sorry. Were there other things underneath of it? Or was it just the titles on an explanation of what? Okay, we have it now. Thanks.
So in the survey, the description, and again, this is straight from the House bill. So that's a good place to also reference. Diversion and restorative justice. The area of focus is identifying factors that lead youth to involvement in the system and exploring alternatives that promote rehabilitation over punishment. Detention and placement, analyzing the reasons behind youth detention and residential placements and assessing the need for and availability of alternative options. Assessment in court processes, reviewing the methods used for youth assessment, the court process, community supervision, and reentry to ensure they are effective and supportive of youth development. Service delivery, evaluating the services provided to youth under supervision, such as behavioral health, education, and workforce development, and ensuring resources are utilized efficiently and collaboratively across different systems. Disparities, investigating racial and ethnic and other disparities affecting youth in the juvenile justice system to inform equitable practices and policies. Quality assurance and data systems, assessing the effectiveness of state and county systems for quality assurance, data collection, reporting, and oversight to improve accountability and transparency. Alignment with best practices, seeking opportunities to align the juvenile justice system with constitutional mandates, local and national best practices, and relevant research findings. Public safety and accountability, balancing public safety concerns with the principles of personal responsibility and accountability, and adolescent brain science while focusing on youth reformation. And victim rights, ensuring that the rights of victims are recognized and upheld within the juvenile justice process. And then commissioners were asked to rank their choices 1 through 9. And there's a link to the House bill there. And so what I can do is send out, most of you may still have the link, which is still active. You should still be able to see exactly what I just read. I don't know if, could tell me if you're not able to.
I so apologize. I just meant the top 3. I'm so sorry, Chair. I was just trying to think of what we're voting on. I apologize. Thank you. That was very kind of you.
No, and you know what, Commissioner Rogers, I was actually answering Vice Chair Rojo's question. So you're welcome.
So yeah, I would move to hold a vote on those top 3 highlighted areas of our survey. And if everyone agrees that that is what we should focus the first priorities of our technical assistance on in our surveys. Is that what we're?
And just to clarify, there are actually 4 because there was a tie. And so are we okay with moving forward with the 4 as opposed to the 3, or would you like to?
I would move forward with the 4 because I think 2 of them they all complement each other. So I would move to move forward with those 4. And I don't know if anyone would second that or if anyone wants to just focus on the 3.
I would second that.
Yeah. Okay. So a motion on the floor is to move forward with the 4 identified areas, which are diversion and restorative justice, disparities, service delivery, and alignment with best practices. The second was made by Commissioner Berger. Is there any discussion?
Sure.
Yes.
So if we move forward with 3 or if we move forward with 4, what are the ramifications to all the ones that aren't moving forward with? And what's the timeline to actually address those?
Well, I think that, and maybe Ryan, you might be able to help me as well. It's my understanding, like at least if we start to have a conversation about these initial 4, and then we're able to get someone on board for the technical assistance to help us really identify, because honestly, all 9 of them they do relate to one another. And I think what the commissioner said, and I'm going to lean on you a little bit, in July was that we wanted to just start out with a few to just figure out what's happening while we're kind of waiting for the technical assistance. And I think once we have someone identified or a group identified for the technical assistance, they all have ideas about how we can do an accurate inventory and move forward and ensure that we're capturing the 9. I think that per the House bill, we are required to meet at least 4 times a year. And so later on in the agenda, we have some proposed dates for our next meetings for the year of 2025. And so hopefully, we'll be able to identify those, and then we can identify when we're prepared to move forward and maybe adding the additional priorities. Again, a report is not due to the legislature until 2026. So we have some time to work through. And I think that by focusing on the 4 initially, it'll give us some time to start and get our feet wet and figure out who's doing what around these certain areas. And then I think the other pieces might tie in. But others, please feel free to chime into that question.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I just want to make sure, particularly put it on the record, is that the commission isn't deciding not to address the other ones, that it's going to be a phased in approach and that there'll be a further discussion on when those are going to go. And there might be some adaptability depending as these 4 are discussed, and that they're just not going to be solely the focus, but other things are able to be discussed too.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Murphy?
My question, I think, comes from my understanding that you stated that only 9 commissioners completed the survey. I think there's 17 seats on the commission. Is that roughly? Some of which are still not filled. Is that also correct? So if this is a prioritization of initial focus and we're still having an RFP right now for someone to help us identify how we would focus on these, I'm wondering if maybe a little bit more time to allow more commissioners to respond, because we're barely at a majority of commissioners having voted on these criteria might be a place to perhaps go. I'm leaning towards, so I'd like to know more perspective on, or at least the full board vote on what the prioritization should be.
And if I may just respond briefly, I think the worry and sort of taking more time to wait on that is just, I mean, we are required by law to look at all 9 of these areas, but I think that by focusing on just a couple to begin with, I mean, even if only 9 members responded, that's a start. And when we're procuring this technical assistance and trying to figure out how we just start this, those key areas that we start with are going to end up filling out the other 9 areas as we go. And a lot of times, like whenever I'm doing research, for example, on something, right, it's you're first looking at that big picture, right? Every now and then you have to step back, look at all those, and then hone in on each specific point. And so I do hear the concern that we don't have all of these positions represented yet. I know that we have the member of a federally recognized Indian tribe is not here. I think we are still missing a couple members of the Senate.
Yes.
So again, I understand the concern, but I do worry about sort of taking more time to sort of pick the areas we're going to focus on to begin with, just given that we might only meet 4 times a year. We're all very busy. So that's my concern, to kind of taking more time. But I do understand the concern that we don't have everything yet.
Commissioner Rogers?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Chair. I actually, when people are talking, I'm trying to make sure I know who's talking. I think it was maybe Commissioner Murphy that talked about not having more than 9. Again, 9 is the minimum number for us to even call a quorum. And so I guess I have that same concern about voting on them in such a formal way versus kind of just prioritizing and kind of ticking them off as we go as a starting point and a way to walk through it. Because I also agree that we don't want to say the others aren't important. But until we have support through the TA or through CJC or somewhere, even the strategy on how to move forward, we haven't kind of gotten there yet. So I'm not ready to vote per se on the 4 that we're going to take off on first of the 9. But I also think it's definitely informative for us to start moving forward in a less formal way.
Commissioner Berger?
Well, I guess my position is that I personally want to get going and working. And while I understand the need for processing, it's important, especially at the beginning. I want us to start doing stuff. And the survey went out. I think we had adequate time to answer the survey. Let's just get going. And it's not like we're saying the other ones aren't important, but that's a huge thing that we need to start working through. And I'm worried if we're only going to meet 4 times a year, we're then kicking the can down to the next meeting to start moving forward. And I don't care which one we choose or which 4 we choose. I just want to get moving. I mean, you can take my survey and take the lowest 4. I don't care.
Thank you, Commissioner Berger. Commissioner Rogers, I saw you come up.
Yeah,
Are you?
I don't disagree. I don't know. That's why I was saying I don't know that we need to necessarily vote. We can just take what it came and start. The voting makes it feel like there's a ranking of the others, not so much. So anyway, I think it informs us and we move forward. That's a little bit different.
Other feedback? Commissioner Detman?
Yeah, I mean, I think Molly hit it, and some of it's maybe sort of semantic, like maybe we're not talking about prioritization, but we're talking about ways to get the ball rolling and move forward. So Molly kind of captured the thought that was occurring to me, that we gotta get going, and maybe we don't need a formal vote. But 9 of 14 people who are active with this commission voted. So, or not voted, but
Participated.
completed the survey. And so that's my thought. I wonder, just so we all are aware, when do we think we'll have the other positions filled? Like, just as a point of like, oh, that's could be 6 months from now, or is that 8 months from now, or the next sometime in the spring when the Senate Rules Committee gets back together? Is there a timeline for that?
Well, the other caveat is that you also have members whose term expires in January. And it's not just Commissioner Conrad. I think there are some others.
Fine.
And I think that the CJC is working with, I'm sorry?
I can provide an update. if
Please,
you'd like, yeah.
please.
So for we have done the petition, I guess, or for reappointment. I think we'll put that out to those who are expiring as of now, or January of 2025. We acknowledge that obviously an election is in a very quickly around the corner. And so as an agency, our plan was to then readdress the Senate vacancies after the election here next week. So probably latter part of November, which is prior to the holiday, we would let them know of vacancies. Realistically, probably then you'd see any response of election being made in January at the earliest. And then as it relates to the tribal representative vacancy, we have made an effort, and I would ask any commissioner to help us in that effort, doing outreach and seeking interest. We have yet to receive anybody who has responded and expressed interest in the commission. So it's harder to put a time on that.
Any other conversation or thought? So the request that I'm hearing, I know that there is a motion on the floor. And I want to address the request and discussion that some commissioners feel like, as opposed to a formal vote, that we just come to an informal consensus, that these are the areas that we're going to move, that we agree to move forward with first and start to figure out what exists related to these areas in the state. Is that?
I can withdraw the motion if we do not wish to hold a vote on that. Just again, the concern is that we just don't get started, but if we're all in this informal agreement that we're going to get started, all of these areas are going to be discussed, but we do have to start somewhere. That's just all I want to make sure is happening. So I would withdraw the motion.
Thank you. And just to for the minutes to clarify that we are in consensus that these 4 areas are our initial priority areas. However, we are going to identify a plan for it's a phased-in approach, as Commissioner Conrad kind of eloquently stated, that we are going to phase in the other areas along with the technical assistance. Is that? Yes. Okay. Great. Okay. Are there any questions about the 4 areas that exist or remain? Or if anybody's interested in the data, I could pull that too. Would you like to know who or how votes?
I don't know, you have to do it right now, but I would like to see just the data that came out, even if though it's small numbers, and I don't need to know the names on it, but I'm just interested in it because I like data, but you don't have to do it now.
Okay, I can put that together and get that out to the commissioners. Okay. Simple enough. So the 4 meetings a year are the minimum standard for the House bill. It doesn't mean that we can't meet more. However, given the recent polling of this group, everybody is very, very busy. And I don't know how feasible additional meetings will be for the group. However, that is an offer that stands, that we can meet more than the 4 times that are required. So with that, we would like to propose tentative meeting dates for the following weeks in 2025. February 3rd through the 7th, sometime that week. May 5th through the 9th. August 4th through the 8th. And November 3rd through the 7th.
Chair, if I can ask,
Please.
for that, the February and the May meeting, is there a rough agenda? And if so, does that agenda include reactions or somehow engaging with the legislature and whatever bills are moving through the building at that point in time to stay engaged and or to somehow get and present informational for the House Judiciary Committee at least?
A great question.
I would ask you to explore more what your thoughts, what you suggest the commission do. I think there's no agenda set to my knowledge, Chair.
There's not.
So the February one, to me, it would make sense saying how that's going to be the beginning of the long session. That if there's some sort of consensus by then, there should be, I think most of the bills will have dropped. And so if there is something that affects and impacts this commission, that there at least be some sort of discussion and knowledge about it. And if there is that interest to engage with the legislature, however that the commissioners deem appropriate. I mean, we have some state agency directors and folks involved, so I leave it to your ethics and what you can and can't do given who your boss is. But that the commission somehow engage at the beginning, and then that May, it should be past the second chamber deadline, and you can see what bills are really likely to pass and what has passed, and to still continue to stay engaged with both the House and the Senate side and judiciary. But given some of these, particularly behavioral health, also the healthcare committees, I think, are going to be crucial. And happy to make recommendations or talk to some other reps that work for and are involved in the juvenile side of things, particularly behavioral health. And anyway, that's what I would offer up. And I don't know, Andy, do you have anything to add on behalf of your employer?
Representative Conrad, I would just agree with everything you said, that that would be a great opportunity to engage the legislature. And then one other thought just on the timing of our meetings, and that is for members, elected members, whether they be a senator or representative, we're going to have challenges with committees and attendance, to get members. So I might put forward, just to throw out, I don't know if those dates include Fridays, what you gave, but Friday afternoons might be the best time. If that wasn't a good time for other reasons, we may have conflicts with members attending because of committees, just to put that forward.
Thank you so much, Mr. Smith. And those dates do include a Friday. So thank you. And thank you, Commissioner Conrad. I think that that's a really great perspective and something that we briefly touched on, or that you briefly touched on in July as well, the importance of that. And I know that there are, for example, both Molly and I are representatives on the Oregon Juvenile Division Directors, Department Directors Association. And with that association, they do have a legislative committee, which both Molly and I sit on. And they've really been prioritizing the juvenile related bills. And of course, in our respective counties, we have folks who are looking at juvenile related bills too. And I think it would be easy for us to kind of bring that work to this body. But I do see Commissioner Rogers, you have your hand raised, and perhaps you're going to speak along the same lines.
Well, potentially, thank you, Chair, Commissioner Rogers. And I would like at our meeting, our first meeting, I think you said February, that we have some time, just roundtable, to talk about what our prospective groups are talking about for legislative purposes, and just have, because bills should have dropped by that time. And I would just ask maybe that we put some time on the agenda so that we can talk through that. And then hopefully maybe CJC could help us kind of frame how our role is if a legislator happens to ask us a question. Oftentimes, some of us are in the halls and we might be testifying as some representing another agency or our own county. But just having that conversation and being very deliberate at our February meeting to have some time around the legislature.
That makes sense. And I totally agree with you, Commissioner Rogers. Any other thoughts?
I have a question.
Please.
So I agree with what both Commissioner Rogers and I believe Commissioner Conrad said. But my question is, do we expect to have, because I know at the last meeting we talked about how many groups, how many committees are working on, whether it's behavioral health or with Department of Education, there's all these bills that could potentially affect juvenile justice. Do we expect to have some sort of inventory of those work groups by February? What does that look like as far as research goes for, that way we can actually kind of move forward talking about these things and talk to the legislature? And is there a plan of action on that?
Please.
Sure. My answer like similar. I think just because of where we're at timeline and contracting, it may serve as a good discussion of this commission in February that would inform an inventory that hopefully a TA provider is already in effort on, but would kind of be able to align with either any findings at that point in time, any new ideas, kind of have that discussion as they complete something that, like I said, more realistically probably should expect to be delivered in March, April.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
One comment about scheduling. Obviously, the sooner you send out a poll, the better it is in terms of people's schedules, because time fills up right away. So if you can send out that poll right away.
Thank you, Jeremy. Please.
Based on our recent experience with trying to schedule a meeting in August, which was a failure, I'm wondering if we should have a commission meeting the first week of September instead. It seems that August was it was impossible for us to find a meeting date. And although we tried several dates, so we could review the report. And I know we're talking several months in advance, but I think that August is a time where lots of people are away from the office. And I don't know if we would have more success if we looked at the first week of September instead of the first week of August.
And the hope is, right, we're 10 months away from August. And as opposed to like a week or 2 weeks away, like we were in July, which was really tough for everyone. Right now, are there foreseeable conflicts the week of August 4th through the 8th?
That all the other boards, but things that I do, that is always tough to schedule because of the vacations. You're going to get such a low turnout.
So I guess with that, we're going from February to May to September to November. a little bit of a gap. You looked like you were gonna say something.
No.
Okay.
Maybe we could try it August, and then if it doesn't work out at that point, we could consider September.
Perhaps send a poll for August and September is that? Okay.
If, Chair, if you get the invites out, we can at least get it on our calendars and start to protect it. So I agree that I'm really appreciative of talking about it now. And I agree with you. If we get it on the calendars, then we can kind of protect it. And if it's there, we might change our vacations a day or two here or there. But I want to back up to the legislative piece real quick.
Sure.
And maybe ask each of us for our February meetings to kind of bring a list of what you think is a impacting juvenile justice. I actually do agree that the Juvenile Directors Association does a pretty good job of collecting all that seem to be impacting juvenile justice. And so we should be able to have a pretty comprehensive list, but maybe even just giving us a little bit of homework before that next meeting and getting those to somebody ahead of time and we can collect them for that conversation.
That sound?
I'm not understanding, click what?
So I think what you're asking for, Commissioner Rogers, is for if you're aware of or involved in any juvenile related legislation or committees or
legislation, because it's talking about the legislative piece is somebody was talking about the inventory of all the legislation. There's quite a few of us around the table that probably know a lot of the legislation that's impacting juveniles from our different lenses that we bring to the table. And so I think we'll actually have a pretty good inventory to talk about at the February meeting if we all just bring what we know about.
And I think, Commissioner Rogers, there's legislation that may impact juvenile that is not on our radar because it's very adult focused, kind of like 4002. But I think that there was some pretty good effort with 4002 to try to involve juvenile, but I think I understand what you're asking. And is there any other conversation regarding what Commissioner Rogers is asking for us to do as homework by February?
Vice Chair Rojo, I just like that idea because it answers kind of the question that I had earlier. But I'm all for it, kind of giving us all homework on that since we're not going to have obviously that inventory yet. We're still building up that assistance to do research, but we want to, hit the ground. Those are my thoughts.
Okay. So in February, commissioners will come prepared with any juvenile related or possibly tangentially related legislation. Is that okay? And just to put it out there, the meetings that are scheduled, the 4 meetings or that will be scheduled, those will be in person. So there will be, I wanted to ask this group if Salem is the preferred location, or are there other locations that you would like to rotate to, or?
During legislative session, I think Salem's the best place to be.
So that's February, but May and August, well, possibly May too, but August and November. And I'm totally fine with having the hybrid option of both. And if Salem is the place that we want to stay in for the remainder of with all of the meetings that are scheduled, I think that's fine too. But I wanted to give folks the opportunity to weigh in about location.
Here, Brian Devon, the person who works closely with my council. Yeah, maybe keeping him in Salem for this year. I don't know if strategically it makes the most sense, but logistically, as we're getting things going and with the legislative session, my advice would be, yeah, keep them in one place, get things established, maybe CJC will get some get things set and settled, but it is a maybe longer range of good thing to think about other locations as well, but you might get things kind of established over this current year and then or into the next year, I should say, and then maybe start thinking about other locations because other locations good and also offers some logistical with a virtual meeting or a hybrid meeting can offer more complication, but that you might want to just have a long runway to sort out.
Any other thoughts? Hearing none, it sounds like all of the meetings moving forward in 2025 will be scheduled somewhere in Salem. And that will help, I think, with the organization administrative part. Okay. That's all I had. Do we want to do a round table before we adjourn? We have 25 whole minutes.
Chair, if I can just add something real quick, just to put it on the agenda, one of the other groups that's getting going, and I think our meeting is tomorrow for meeting, it is Regional Health, you can get the name of it. Joint Task Force on Regional Behavioral Health Accountability. So again, just looking for and staying in tune with the juvenile side of it, making sure that they're taken into account as we have conversations with that. So again, I will have to be stepping off of that come January as well. So I'm just trying to look for that intersection, bring it to your awareness.
Thank you for that. And I know one of the things that was asked is the role of the chairperson in coming before some of the committees and being able to be visible and present. And I'm totally happy and willing to do that if invited. So definitely on the radar. I will be having a little person in end of February, March. Thank you. But I will be back for the May meeting. So anytime between now and end of February and then that break in May, I'm happy to be as present as possible. One of the things that I recently did was went to Kojak, which is in Molly, you have to help me with the acronym for this. It's the Council of Eastern Oregon Juvenile Justice County.
Let me take it for you for that. Let me be your lifeline for a minute, Chair.
Please.
Yeah, it's the Central and Eastern Oregon Juvenile Justice Consortium. I actually think some of the dates of our committee will overlap theirs, but that's okay. And it's the 17 counties that are east of the Cascade, of which Wasco County is one of those counties.
Thank you, Commissioner Rogers. Thank you for being my lifeline. What they've asked is that the chair of the Juvenile Justice Policy Commission also attend meetings moving forward to kind of get their perspectives, because the rural and the central rural perspectives are sometimes lost. And so I know that the president of the Oregon Juvenile Justice Department Association Directors Association also attends their meetings to give updates. But I think it's something that, you know, being intentional and connecting with the rural and state other counties is important, and being a statewide base. So I definitely, and I encourage other commissioners too, if you would like to join me or participate collaboratively in something, I'm happy to be a part of that.
And I would volunteer to help you out with that or go to some of those meetings as well. Just got to get to me in advance so I don't have a trial schedule.
Okay. So Vice Chair Rojo, in March, end of February, March, April, that's your go-to. So.
I'm sure.
And just
Can I go Commissioner Murphy and then Commissioner Rogers?
absolutely.
Thank you.
On that note, and I know it's kind of more of a general roundtable, I think one of the major commissions we should be communicating or at least aware of is the Alcohol Drug Policy Commission, that the House Bill 4002 required them to assess opioid use disorder as it pertains to juveniles, and specifically youth accessing disorder treatment and increasing access to potential treatment organizations. And I know that that requires them to report to the System of Care Advisory Council that's coming up as well. And so obviously that's going to be directly relevant to systems that affect juvenile systems. And so I don't know, especially if we have an RFP out, if we're duplicating efforts or if there's something there of them trying to kind of organize and get the same, for example, what sort of treatment facilities are we talking about? What does residential care look like? I mean, those are all things that they should, I think, reasonably be talking about. So it's just another commission that I think we should be kind of monitoring closely.
Thank you. And I think several of us sit on SOCAP too. I'm on their DEI committee, I just found out. I'm excited. And I know that Molly or Commissioner Rogers is an active participant in SOCAP as well.
I am as well, Chair.
Oh, good.
And ADPC.
So here we go. So all people kind of talking about the same thing.
Yeah. Commissioner Rogers, although you're number 2, I know you were after Commissioner Murphy, so I'll go to you and then Commissioner O'Leary.
So I actually, thank you, Chair. I actually think it would be great, maybe not for our February meeting, or maybe for a February meeting. I have seen the 2 reports from ADPC and System of Care that they presented to the legislature, to ask them to present those same presentations to us. So that we ask Director Dolph and Director Williams to come to our meeting and show us the PowerPoint and start that collaboration. So if that, maybe it would make sense if it was the February meeting, but if that meeting gets too full, maybe the May meeting. So that's all I had to say.
I think that's a great suggestion. Thank you, Commissioner Rogers. Commissioner O'Leary?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Rogers' suggestion too. I think that's a really smart idea. Originally, I raised my hand because when we were talking about locations, it kind of hit me as an afterthought. But I would offer any of OIA's facilities as a location for future meetings. And I think that while OIA represents a very small part of the overall juvenile justice system, it is a very expensive part. And it's a part that has a lot of youth. And having interactions with youth who are incarcerated and listening to their voices and hearing about the from their subjective understanding of what led to or what resources they could have used earlier on could be really informative for this group.
Absolutely, and thank you so much, Commissioner O'Leary. I think that's a really great suggestion and something for us to think about. I know that Commissioner Davala, if you're okay with me sharing, is that okay?
Sure. I don't know what you're saying, but go ahead.
Commissioner Davala volunteers at McLaren, and there was a youth who was very interested in this body of work and wanted to listen in. And I thought that that was so amazing, and I think it would be great to continue to encourage that and also possibly be present in the facility. So, and Commissioner O'Leary, I didn't ask your permission for that. Sorry, apologize.
No permission needed. He's one of my law students. He's a very smart kid. He would be very inquisitive if he were to join one of our meetings. It'd be interesting and fun.
Which is great. I mean, unique to have youth perspective and youth voice on a youth commission. So, and I know that there's some work that's happening, I believe, with Jordan Bates' group, that there's a youth, maybe not Jordan, maybe it's elsewhere, but there's a youth commission.
It's through
OJD.
Yeah,
Hi,
it's
Jordan.
hi everybody. Just to introduce myself quickly, because I heard my name, I'm Jordan Bates. I work in Office of General Counsel at OJD, and I'm just observing. But yeah, through OJD, there's a youth board. They are currently recruiting new members, but they've already done a lot of work. They've had one round of work done. And so I think coordinating with them at any point or hearing from them. If you all are interested in that, we could absolutely help facilitate that. They're working on or I think they're planning to work on a handbook for youth involved in the system right now, and they've come up with some other great suggestions.
That would be great. Thank you so much, Jordan, and thank you for allowing me to kind of call your name out and for participating.
You bet.
Glad you're here. Commissioner Rogers?
Yes, also we have a youth group with our Youth Development Council and Youth Development Oregon. And so I would, and we've created a way that we actually are able to participate with youth who are incarcerated in our meetings via virtual. And so I would let Brian speak to that. Also, you know, I think I appreciate Director O'Leary's offer. And I think each juvenile director in their county would make sure that if we wanted to go out to their space and come out definitely to the eastern side for meetings at some time in the future, 90% of the youth are served at the county level. And we would be glad to entertain and engage with you, as that's where the local juvenile justice system is.
Yep, I agree. Thank you, Commissioner Rogers. And that's kind of where I was heading with the question, like, do we want to get out? But I think it does make sense our first year to be here and then maybe be more strategic in the future and kind of plan out where we go and perhaps start scheduling meetings for 2026 in August or September of 2025.
If you want to stay in Salem, you do another comment. Probably glad to do a huge new building of this big home. Very, very adequate.
Thank you so much. Thank you. We actually talked about that as a possible option for this meeting because we moved from the Broadway Common. So thank you so much, Commissioner Perret. Anything else for the good of the order?
Just one last thing. People were talking about minutes and the fact that they're produced. I don't know if I got them, I just didn't see them. Are they sent out to us, or do we have to go look for them in the website, in the SharePoint? Or
They should be sent out on your way. I'll make sure.
okay,
That's all.
thanks.
That's what I'm looking for.
Bye, thanks.
Good question. I'm glad you asked.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts or questions?
I have one more thing before we go.
Please.
So regarding the homework that we all have for February, I know we didn't do a formal vote and we all kind of came to an informal consensus. When we're focusing on those groups and bills that we're going to put together to sort of talk about in February, are we focusing on those kind of key areas? Or are we all sort of just taking our own things that we think are important in these 9 areas and bringing them to the table?
That's a really great question. And I'd like to open that up.
I think it'd be ideally both, if I may jump in, Chair. Because take advantage of the the session. Let's skip this word. Take advantage of the session while it's there and opportunities that come in. And the other thing that I'd highly recommend is, I mean, I know I've talked to Molly a number of times, but just make sure the word juvenile is in the legislation that is pertinent and they don't get left out. So adding one word makes a huge difference. And I know CJC is good about that and Ken's really good about showing up and talking as well. But that's what I would highly recommend, is make sure they do not get left out and take advantage of the opportunities. So I say both.
Any other thoughts or questions?
Can I just ask a clarifying question, Kelly from the CJC? Are we going to be collecting all of this prior to the February meeting to like kind of organize the discussion, or are you all just going to bring it to the table and then organize yourself during the meeting?
Commissioner Rogers, what was your thought?
So my thought, that's a great question. And this is Commissioner Rogers. So one of the pieces is, I know that the Oregon Juvenile Directors Association's Legislative Committee collects a lot of bills, and we organize them and we really keep a scope out on all sorts of different areas. And so I am assuming that there's a couple other organizations that do that. And one of them I think is really around community mental health organizations really do that. And I think that, I think those two are probably the largest two that do that. But there are also maybe the DAs, and Brendan maybe could speak, Commissioner Murphy could speak to that. that we could kind of collaborate, and maybe I could help if we don't have the person on board yet from the technical assistance. Maybe I could help volunteer with CJC just to get a list of the numbers of bills that either could currently relate to juvenile and juvenile justice or should relate. And those are probably going to come from the DA's list a little bit more, that we need to put the word youth in or whatever we need to address. So I think if we could ask just the commission members a couple weeks before our meeting, if they have a list of bill numbers that they could share that maybe are appropriate for to have a conversation, and then we can kind of walk through it and maybe a little bit of a facilitated discussion at our meeting.
So to clarify,
Yeah.
the goal will be that commissioners will send their homework to maybe Carol.
Yeah, we'll determine that when it comes.
Okay.
But CJC.
Okay,
CJC.
CJC by January 27th or January 20th. Ideally, if our meeting is that first week in February. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Commissioner Berger.
Well, I guess that brings up a question that I'm guessing Brandon also has. I'm on the OCDLA legislative committee. I'm not here as an OCDLA. I mean, I'm on the commission as OCDLA. While I'm on the committee, I don't have authority to agree to any changes in any legislation that OCDLA may be putting forward. I could certainly take back to the legislative committee concerns, but I can't agree to anything because that's above my pay scale. And then on the other side, I mean, with OPDC, we're not going to have any legislation, but certainly we will be moving forward in terms of the change in the public defense delivery system that will have an effect on juveniles, but that's going to be dependent upon the legislature and how much money, if any, we get for any additional programs. So I can bring those things, but I can't agree to any changes in those things. And I'm guessing Brendan might be in the same position with ODAA in terms of we can't agree for our agency.
Well, that's my understanding. Just overall summary, just to be clear, what I was thinking I was doing is I am aware of the District Attorney Association Legislative Committee. You are correct, Commissioner Rogers, that the DA's Association tracks these concepts that are floating out there that may affect youth in criminal justice systems. So I am more than happy to share this is ODAA's sort of tracking list. And then we would bring it before this commission is away. And then the commission, I'm sure, would have multiple commissioners bring different lists. And then we could have CJC collate that and kind of organize that. And then this commission would decide based on, I think, our voting and prioritization of these are the bills that we're paying attention to. And if the commission had a concern about something ODAA was proposing, I think I could be a conduit to kind of expressing that there is a concern, but I certainly wouldn't be voting as a commission, nor would I be voting as an association. Sure. The ODAA, it would just be to facilitate information flow. And then I think we all have already recognized if we're in the building and we're wearing the commissioner hat, we need to be extremely careful about that when we are testifying on legislative concepts. I mean, very clear with testimony what entity we're representing. And I know most all of us have experience with that, so that's not a concern. So I was picturing myself as a conduit of information, especially for this, just what's floating out there. Mm-hmm. And then this commission would decide what to focus on based on what's floating out there.
That's the way I understood it too. Okay. Commissioner Rogers, did you? Sorry, Commissioner Gillen, I see you.
Yeah, I was say Commissioner Gillen's there. I absolutely. I don't think our council has formed and worked well enough or worked together enough yet to know what our positions are. I think we're using this just as an information conduit because I don't know that we've sat and worked long enough to know how we would even come up and what kind of data would we even need to know before we could take a full position.
Commissioner Keelan?
I'm wondering if there's a way that the collated list could be sent out well enough in advance that we could have time to review it and see if some things are missing. We do a lot of bill analysis within the Oregon Department of Human Services, and I suspect that we may see bills that are related to children that may not be outlined as specifically related to juvenile justice, but may have impacts on the juvenile justice system. So kind of similarly to the adult system, not including juvenile. So if the collated list is sent out well enough in advance that we can kind of cross-check it for any missing items, that would be great.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Gielan. I just, for time's sake, want to think about like how much in advance, right? How far in advance? And that's kind of like December, right? Like commissioners having their homework turned in by December. So that way commissioners could review that before February, the first week of February. And I think the question is that doable? And is there enough information already out there to be able to inform, or is there more information that comes like in January before the session or as the session is, right? Like how frequently are those lists going to be adapted by that first week of February to be informative and helpful? I think that's probably one of the concerns that I would have.
Right, because I may know the bills that OCDLA has, and Brandon may know the bills that ODAA has, but there's bills that get dropped all the time by either committees or legislators or other citizens that we're not going to know until the bill drops, perhaps.
Sure, I think it's just a starting point. Sorry, Chair Armstrong. I think this is just this starting point because a lot of them are getting, it's the pre-session filing and the first drop. We all know the legislative session is very, very dynamic. It's just a place to start and have a conversation.
Okay, so as a starting point, when would commissioners like to have their homework submitted back to? And again, this might be maybe a hard deadline, right? Like this survey had a deadline, and so.
Remind me, when in January are the bills dropped? Is it like the 7th-ish? Am I remembering correctly?
It's usually a couple of days after the session starts that they start to drop.
It's the LCs start, I remember, right? They come out, I think it came out like 4 or 5 days before session started.
Right.
So
this is Andy Smith. Maybe a good timeline would be the session starts on the 21st, I'm pretty sure. So right around there, the first couple of days, bills will be read. People will be scrubbing things right in there. We'll have the first initial, batch of bills to look at. That might be a good time, right around there, 3rd, 4th week of January. Maybe a little sooner, but that's a safe bet.
Thank you so much, Mr. Smith. So possibly if we had a deadline of January 29th, which is a Wednesday, for commissioners to send their information to, we'll notify you, probably Carol or someone in CJC. Is that doable?
That sounds doable to me.
Great.
Gotta start somewhere.
So the poll will go out for all of the meetings actually in 2025. We'll select the weeks and there will be a time frame of which we hope that you respond for those. And then the homework will also there will be a reminder that it will be due on January 29th. Other than that, are there any other follow-up items that I'm missing? Future meetings will be held here in Salem, not in this building, maybe, but they'll be here somewhere in Salem. Anything else?
There's street parking in Juvenile.
Clarence too. Surprisingly, they don't pay you pass.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
All right, well, thank you all for your time, and I look forward to our next meeting. I hope everyone has a safe and wonderful holiday season.
You too.
Everybody.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, thank you. Thank you.
You mentioned I'm allowed to talk about it.
Yes, you are.
Right.
Thank you, Brian.
Of course.
Roger here.
Yeah. Whereas in Oregon, it's like this weird.
I remember that. That's then.
Oh, I think I have you.
Yes.
The JCP plan. When is that typically due?
And so. I don't know of anyone. Winter, there's